to order for the March meeting of the Clemson City Police Advisory Board. We'll start with the roll call. Myself, Lisa Robinson, present. Jackie Myers is absent. Kevin Dull? Present. Present. Sandy Edge?
Present.
Riley Wright?
Present.
Pablo Unda?
Present.
Elena Sari?
Present.
Quinton Hunter?
Present.
And Ashby Williams is currently absent. All right, if we move on to the approval of the agenda, if you look over the agenda, let us know if there are any changes, additions, edits before we proceed. If there are none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. No, abstaining, no opposed. All right. On to the minutes. So these are the minutes of February 22nd. If you have those in front of you, if you'll take a look through those if you haven't already had a chance to read them. If there's anything in here that needs to be edited or corrected. If there are no changes or additions, I can finish reading them if I could get a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion approved the minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. All right, that carries. We will now move on to the fifth item, which is citizens' comments. And I see we do have someone in the audience. Are you here to make a comment?
I'm not.
Okay, all right. We do not have any citizens present today to comment, so we will move on to the departmental status staffing review.
Thank you. Currently, we have all of our vacancies but one filled. Yesterday, one of our dispatchers who applied to be a police officer passed her comprehensive exam and her physical agility at the academy, and this Sunday will report for her training that she'll start on Sunday at, I think it's 4 weeks training, and then when she's completed with the training there, she'll come back and do her FTO. We have 2 officers currently in field training, and 2 of our new hires that just started this last week. One was a officer from Walhalla who's been in law enforcement for 4 years, who has come to us, and she'll start her training here shortly. And another was formerly a city employee in the city of Seneca, but he has to start from scratch. So he'll start his 4 weeks of online training on Monday. So we only have 1 vacancy that we're trying to fill right now in police officer. The 1 vacancy that we had in dispatch, we filled. She starts on Monday. She is a transfer from the state corrections system. She was working there for about a year and was working quite a ways from her home. She applied for and was accepted in our program, and so she'll start on Monday and start her training. We still have 1 dispatcher in training that started with us several weeks ago, but she's moving right along. She still has to go to the jail school down at the academy, and the jailer that came back from the jail school and has been finishing up on her jail training, she should be fully solo here shortly. So as far as staffing is concerned, we are in good shape. Let's see. as far as some other things that help with staffing and such, we just upgraded our body-worn cameras. We're now using the Axon Body 3s, which is an upgrade from the previous cameras that we were using. And we are now using the cloud service that Axon provides with that called evidence.com. We received those cameras last week before, and we've rolled them out now. And basically it is more efficient and more secure. You may remember I went before council for a budget variance so that we could do this, which they approved. So we now have them deployed. Vehicles, we've had a few involved in crashes in the near past. And unfortunately, because of the age of the vehicles, they're getting totaled out to fix. We did this past budget year get approved to buy 5 patrol vehicles. They're all in. They were going to the upfitter and the stripers. They're almost ready to be deployed. We'll probably put something out on social media when they come out because their striping is different than what our current striping is. So we'll let the public know that they are Clemson police cars. So anytime there's blue lights flashing behind you, you should still pull over. But we'll show what they look like so people know. So they'll be coming out soon. And
Why is the design of them different than the typical? Is that just
we decided to go away
kind
from
of update something?
the current scheme. It wasn't necessarily a budgetary reason. It is a little bit cheaper to do that, but part of the problem is because the current scheme we have is so unique that when they do get dinged up and they have to go to the body shop and get repaired, it's that much more to try and get those decals to put them on there. So we're going, when you see it, they're more of a, I hate to say generic, but more of a common type of font and those types of things. So that's it for our staffing.
Any questions for Chief on staffing? All right, we can move on to crime review.
Okay. For the month of February, we answered 3,401 calls for service. We conducted 666 traffic stops and issued 297 citations. We arrested 19 people during that month, made 27 minor in possession cases, and 25 noise complaints. We answered 59 vehicle collision reports, and 6 of which resulted in injuries. As far as the month of February, we only had 2 vehicle break-ins. We had, I'm sorry, that's the wrong number. We had 7 breaking and enterings to a structure, and we had, yes, 2 break-ins on motor vehicles. I got that backwards. For the rest of the crimes reported that during the month of February, that it was pretty light. None of the top felony, other than burglary, like robbery and rape, and those we didn't have any reported this past February. 1 aggravated assault. So those are the top felonies that we report to the FBI. One thing I do want to point out, and I have our map pulled up, and it's showing the last 30 days. There was, I don't recall if this came up on social media before our last meeting or since our last meeting, but I put out an alert, a crime alert about vehicle break-ins that occurred in town, and there were folks that wanted to know where it occurred. If you come to our map, you can see here where it occurred. This is north of 123 and west of College Avenue. So the apartment complexes that are back there, as you get towards the lake, you can see that little bloom of vehicles up there. That's basically where it occurred. When I did the social media post, though, I purposely did not put where it occurred because I want everybody to be more alert about suspicious activity because these groups never hit the same place twice. And the last time they came through, they hit houses along Berkeley and along Issaquena, and they were not apartments. So people start to get a little complacent in their neighborhoods when they don't see anything that's out of the ordinary, and that's when they wind up getting hit. So that's part of the reason why I didn't put a specific location, because I don't want people to say, oh, it's an apartment complex, I don't have to worry about it. It's,
Exactly.
Everybody has to worry about it because these groups travel in from Greenville, from Anderson, from Belton, and they're usually groups of juveniles that will come in and do this. In this stretch here, we recovered a vehicle that they most likely drove in on that was later reported stolen amongst these other vehicles. So they stole a vehicle, and then here in this group, 2 vehicles were stolen from this group. So they abandoned the vehicle that they stole from Greenville here, and then they took one of the 2 vehicles they stole and wherever they went from there. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight how this happens, and we're not, our community is not immune to this, just like, the other areas, Greenville, Easley. I know Easley's had a rash in a couple of parts of their city, so we know these groups are moving around.
So is there a particular time, like what is your, do you know like a particular reason? Is it because it's like a Friday night or there's an activity going on? They think people aren't paying attention? I mean, what makes them decide that this is the time to come in?
So this was reported on the 3rd. When was the 3rd? So the 3rd was Sunday, so this was a Saturday night.
Because I can see like during spring break, maybe they think maybe some students left their cars to
Yeah, and we thought that too, but the students are back now and we haven't taken a lot of reports. So they don't necessarily pay attention to trends like that. It's just a crime of opportunity when they decide to do it. So this was Saturday night, Sunday morning when these burglaries occurred, but they'll happen during the week. They'll happen on a Tuesday night. They'll happen on any night of the week.
Chief, you made a point that you said like Anderson had happened, Greenville happened. Do we communicate, your certain department communicate with them and they say, okay, if they're stealing a bunch of cars, the whole group is coming your way? Is that?
We do. Our detectives have monthly intelligence meetings where they get detectives from all the other agencies and they sit down and talk about cases that they're working, and if they have this similar method operandi or anything like that, then they'll get together to see if it's the same group of suspects and that kind of stuff. In our cases, we're still waiting on some evidence processing to come back to kind of get an idea of which groups may be involved. Other than that one car that was stolen in Greenville, we're assuming they came from Greenville, but they could have come up from Anderson, did their crime spree in Greenville, and then came over to Clemson to do their crime spree. So, I said it's usually juveniles, and you're usually rummaging through the cars to get anything of value that they can pull out of there.
So you do catch some of them, I hope?
Say again?
Some of them do get caught?
Eventually, yes. It does happen. I know that Easley had a rash, and I know that they made a couple of arrests, and then those arrests were based on physical evidence that they had, plus information they received from Greenville County, Greenville City, from some crime sprees that were going on over there. So, but identifying all of them, they have not. But some of them they have.
So just groups of youth doing this. Is it gang related at all? Do you know? Is it what I'm asking is it organized?
It usually is. It's usually a gang. Now, when I say a gang, I'm not necessarily saying Crips, Bloods, MS-13.
Affiliated with a larger organized group.
Correct. They may be loosely affiliated with a larger group like that, but it's usually neighborhood kids that all live in a specific area that hang out and they all travel together and do those things. So, yeah, there's not necessarily, it's all about, gangs are all about that sense of belonging. No different than if you were on a sports team and you got along with all your teammates, that sense of belonging. So especially troubled youth, are always looking for that acceptance into a group, and they wind up doing stuff like this.
Chief, is Country Walk still looking pretty good?
Yeah, we haven't had anything in Country Rock in a while, knock on wood. So if I zoom over here to Country Walk, see, we have two things, disorderly conduct and an alcohol violation. It must have been a house party.
Do you expect to see more activity just in general as it gets warmer and people are,
Yeah,
around the carport, not in the garage, and folks are just kind of...
as it gets warmer, we tend to see that. We also tend to see, because people start going to parks and for outdoor recreation, we start seeing the felony lane groups start to come in and hit cars in parks and gyms when people go in to work out. So that's usually when it starts an uptick, yes.
I'd like to ask a question about the noise. I just wondered, what were there, 20-something or something? And anyway, I was just wondering if the meter y'all have helped in that, or were they downtown noise? I just wondered if y'all were.
So the meter we only take out if it's a very, very loud noise and we think it reaches 90 decibels. I know of one instance in the downtown area where there was a band playing that someone filed a complaint about. Whether they used the meter or not, I'm not sure, but that would be the situation they would have used it.
But most of these noise complaints are probably downtown, aren't they?
They're downtown, or they're in apartment complexes where an adjoining apartment is making too much noise. Occasionally we'll get neighborhoods that will call about another house in the neighborhood if there's a party or something going on. One of the things and if it's okay with Madam Chair, if there's no other questions, I'll segue into the fake ID program. So as you all know, we partnered with IntelliCheck, which is the maker of the Age ID software, to offer up to 15 businesses this application that can be used to check for fake IDs. We got, there's a document in your packet that looks like a spreadsheet here. This, you can see the businesses that have started to use them, and you see February here in a lot of them, but not everybody started in February. And when it was February, it wasn't the full month. It was like the last week in February. So we had some businesses that even to this day are still having some difficulty getting their accounts activated because they're supplying the devices, so some of them have to buy devices and they're waiting for them to come in and get them put in there. But what I'd like to point out so right before spring break, and obviously there's hardly any scans during spring break because most of the places shut down during that time. But right before spring break, we had St. Patty's Day. And if you went downtown on St. Patty's Day, you saw we probably had a record number of people in attendance down there. It was probably close to 10,000 in some estimates that were made throughout the day. But there were several businesses that had this application online and started using it. And I went around and spoke to business owners and the bouncers that were using it. And I had several of them say to me how they like the application, they're glad they're using it, and were surprised about the number of IDs that they were detecting that were fake. Because the fakes are so good, it's hard to tell by the naked eye whether they're fake or not, especially if they're fakes from outside of the state of South Carolina.
Did they find a fake? What did they do?
They don't have the authority to seize it because on the off chance that the fake is actually real and it's a false positive, then they're actually taking somebody's property from them. So my instructions to them are, you do what you want. I'm not giving you the authority to seize it, but it's probably just safest to hand it back to them and say, no, sorry, you can't come in. Or no, sorry, I'm not going to serve you, which they all have the right to do. So most of them, that's what they do. Now, what's interesting here is we have 2 liquor stores on here, and we have one convenience store, actually 2 convenience stores. One's having some problems right now. So it's not just bars that we're focusing on, it's anywhere where they sell alcohol. I've heard stories on 8 Patty's Day where a large group of individuals would walk up to an establishment, they would pull the scanner out, scan it, it would detect it, it's bad, it would hand it back and say, no, you can't come in. And the person would turn around to the group they walked up with and said, they got a scanner, and the whole group would turn around and walk away. So there were several of those. Now, during 8 Patty's Day, we had SLED alcohol division down there in force, and they went through the establishments and carded a bunch of people, and they only caught a handful. They said, the app must be working because there's not a lot of underagers that we're coming across. And I also heard through the grapevine of some of the folks that are in this age group, when they asked why they weren't downtown, the reply was, well, the police chief has us shut down. So it's
Doing your job.
I'm getting indication that it's working.
Yeah.
But I emphasize we're not going to stop it. What we're aiming for is compliance. We're aiming to slow it down, and we're hoping that they find other things to do to socialize. And I know that's always a challenge in town as to what they can do, but that's the purpose here. If you see on the last page, so far to date, based on all the scans that were done, which were 8,276 scans, 13% of them detected a fake or suspected fake.
What are the column labels at the top here? What is that designated?
So U means,
Is that under it?
no, U means that it's like a suspected fake. Y means it passed. I don't know why they label it U, but U is the suspected fake. Y means it was legit.
And the percentage failed is the ones where the fake was detected?
Right, so if you look at like
some of
the
these
very
are
last line, you go 117 out of 1,700 came back as suspected as fake, so that's 6% of the scans were fake. I was just using the last line on the first page.
Yeah.
Size 80, over 80%. So this is
a lot.
really catching a lot of, that's,
How long has this
Significant.
program been on? I know we just started it, but.
Well, this application has been commercially available for some time. I actually purchased licenses for my officers to use when they're going through the bars so that they don't have to fight with all the noise in the bar and call it in on the radio. They can scan it with their phone to see if it's good or not. And they've had it over a year now. I know SLED has been using it more than a year, but this company also has other lines of products to verify checks and other things as well. So this is not their only specialty.
We used it where I worked. It worked well. Telecheck.
so this is a pilot program, and you got this, this is from grant funding. So how
So the
long,
first half-
how much data do you need to show to make it a permanent program?
So next month, I think in about 2 weeks, we're going to do a news conference to talk about it. The funding that I received from Deotis through the Phoenix Center will only fund it for about 6 months. I still need funding for the latter 6 months, and I've put a request in our budget for that. And I'm hoping that the university, who initially pledged with us in this fiscal year that they would match whatever the city would put towards it, that they'll extend that into next fiscal year as well. They can't tell me that now because they haven't gone through their budget process yet. But that's the goal, is to get funding for the latter half of the 6 months. And the reason why I wanted to do it for a year is because we're working with Healthy Campus that's going to compare our numbers to the survey they do about illicit drug use and alcohol use by that demographic to see if it has an effect. And then I've also supplied these numbers to the university police, who have been seeing an uptick in alcohol-related incidences on campus and to see if it has any kind of effect there as well. So that's why it's a pilot. And then if you remember the Charleston pilot, at the end of their pilot, they only did it for 6 months, but at the end of their pilot, IntelliCheck offered a discounted rate for their service to those members that were part of the pilot to continue to use it. It can be expensive for a business, and I think this is a good thing because it allows the businesses to use it to see how well it works, to determine whether they want to then make that a business expense that, and hopefully feed into, you keep hearing in the news about liquor insurance and bar insurance going up and up and up, and hopefully these things will help bring some of those things down.
Do you have a number? Can you share with us like an expense of another 6 months? Or do you, what a whole trial would cost?
I knew those numbers off the top of my head, and we are going through the budget process right now, and I have so many numbers running through my head, I can't remember what they are. I know we got I think it was $20,000 from Deotis. So basically we need another 20 to 25,000 for the second part of the year. Because I think the total cost was around $40,000, but don't quote me on that because like I said, I've got numbers running through my head. Unless Carla remembers better than me.
I'm looking.
She's looking. But when we did bring it to council, they were supportive, and when I told them that I was going to be asking for money, they seemed like they were going to support that, so.
So the reason businesses would want that is just merely not to be shut down because of violence?
No, I don't think it's the shutdown part as much as that, they're on the hook that if someone gets overserved and they're underage in their establishment and then something nefarious happens after they leave, they can be sued. And there's examples all over the state of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the liquor liability insurance is going through the roof, because there's so many where that is actually occurring. So if they can detect underagers and keep them from being served in their establishments, then that just further protects them from any kind of liability beyond that.
These numbers are really telling.
Something.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I suspect the percentage is going to go down because as it starts to work and as they, so the number of scans will continue to be up, but the number of fakes that they catch will be low. And so the more good scans you have, that percentage will shrink.
Were there any businesses that were like, that you came to that were like, no, we don't want this?
Yes. I've offered it to several businesses that said, oh yeah, that would be interested. And then when I followed up with them, crickets. So there are businesses that I think they fear that this would affect their bottom line, but from the businesses that are using it, they have told me that it has not affected their bottom line. And one business that was using this prior to this pilot program, which is Tigertown Tavern, will tell you is that it does nothing but help their business because it has not affected their bottom line at all.
We used it on checks, and we never saw, it was beneficial. It really was, and we never saw it affect our bottom line.
Are there any other questions for Chief regarding the ID pilot program? Okay, the next thing on the agenda are requested presentations. I know that there's a invitation still open to the city attorney, is that correct?
So the new city attorney has been very, very busy.
Yeah.
There's definitely things that council has been keeping them busy with. So when things kind of slow down, then I'll throw the request out there, but that may be a little while before they can come.
Okay, and now we have time for board member open discussion. I just have a question for you, Chief. I'm sorry, maybe this was covered at the last meeting. Are there any particular plans being made for the large student concert that's going to be on campus at the end of the spring?
Yes, we are, it is a joint venture between the university and the city. We have had several meetings and we continue to meet to prepare for that event. We're working with the promoters on that. So yes, we will have enough staff not only to work the event, but also to cover the downtown area after the event. So it's a Friday night, Saturday night event, and the event itself stops at 11, so we know people will go downtown. But yeah, that is something that's
I
ongoing.
remember what the date, Riley, do you
It's the 19th and 20th of April.
19th, 20th, yeah. And is that going to also impact a lot of parking, traffic issues?
So
It's about
that's
four
part
or
of the,
five acts.
that's
And
part of the
some
planning,
name acts.
because there are some athletic events going on at the same time. Well, in the same day, maybe not necessarily at the same time. So they're identifying locations where people can park. I think the biggest question mark is if we have inclement weather, some of those places that they're identifying to park, you can't park in inclement weather. So they're trying to identify some of those locations. So that the university is working on that. As far as the city's concerned, I think I heard, and I'm not, well, I haven't, the intention, I guess, is to allow people that normally sell parking on their property during football games could also sell parking during these events if they would like. And then the regular parking that we have downtown would just be what it is.
Do you have any other items for open discussion?
I had one thing, down by the Palmetto, I guess, smokehouse right down there on the corner
Yes.
of T's. Coming by there early one morning, we had a bunch of rain going on, and I noticed a bunch of homeless people. And I actually talked to an officer about it, but they were backed up with their backs against the wall, standing there, not really doing a whole lot. But when students came by, they were speaking to them, because it wasn't, can't really say harassment, but speaking to them. And there was a couple girls that would go by, and I was at the light, and I looked over, and they were turning their heads and walking away. So it was abrasive. I could see that it was. And so when I asked the officer, he said, yeah, if it's on our side, we can deal with it, call us right away. But if it's on the other side of the university, then it would be theirs. Is that, you could tell they were homeless. So just rain indicate you don't, I mean.
You know, here's the analogy I'll use.
Okay.
How would that be any different than a person who is peacefully asserting their position on a controversial subject on a public sidewalk and the people walking by don't want to interact with them?
Right.
It's perfectly legal. Until they do something to impede their pathway or say or do something that's like a threat, then that's, or the property owner that owns the property that they're standing on comes out and says, I want them removed. That's probably the only times that we could actually do something about it.
Okay.
So the Constitution kind of gets in the way with that.
A little bit.
And it's equally applied for multiple circumstances. So that's, unfortunately covers people when they're doing things that are undesired by some. So there's my,
Your 2 cents?
yeah. Something I failed to mention earlier, and I just want to brief everybody on, is if you're not aware, Dawson Park, which is at the corner of Old Stone Church and 76, is a city park that the city has a lease with the university because that property is actually university property, and they just signed a 25-year lease there. And so we're working with the university right now in the county as to how we could provide police services there because it's not physically within the city limits, so our jurisdiction would normally stop. But we found an Attorney General's opinion that said if the city has a lease for the property and is managing the property, we can provide police services. The thing that does not extend is the municipal court's jurisdiction. So if we made an arrest, we would have to bring that person either to the county magistrate or other court that had jurisdiction. So one of the things we're working on with the university right now is because it's university property and it's within a 5-mile radius of the center of campus, if we could work with the university that if we make an arrest, we go through their court. If that doesn't work out, then we would have to go through the county magistrate. But we would still be able to provide police services to that property. So it's one of those catch-22, 23 things that we have to deal with when it comes to jurisdiction. But that's something that I've been dealing with recently, but we're working to resolve because I know that the city has put some investment by putting the bathrooms there. They always have the baseball games there. I know in July, there's a group that does the Red Hill celebration. So we're trying to work all this stuff out so that we're able to give the services that we need there.
Is there something similar with Nettles, since Nettles is in
So Nettles is,
another county?
well, not really because Nettles is owned by the city.
Okay.
And the city annexed the property that's in Anderson County into the city. So there's portions of Nettles Park that is in Anderson County, but it's still within the city of Clemson. No different than a neighborhood that's not too far away that has 2 streets that are in Anderson County, but they're inside the city limits of Clemson. So the difference here is the university owns the property. The university won't annex the property into the city, so we had to find a way to get around that. Yes, sir.
I found it very interesting to follow all the various newspapers as we saw the chiefs of police come out in various areas and talked about the carry law. And it kind of stayed on the same track in many cases where it looked like y'all kind of had it all together. It's still a bit concerning in many areas, I imagine, from folks. I guess you can take a gun on campus now, or unless that's changed.
No, you can't.
Because there's no sign there that says don't carry.
Yeah, well, it doesn't need to. There's still an enumerated list of locations in the statute that you're not allowed to bring a firearm to.
Schools, libraries, movie theaters.
Correct. Now, I believe the law says now they can bring a firearm in a car when they're transporting in a school, when they're transporting it for the purposes of going to or from like a target shooting or skeet shooting or some other type of competition involving a weapon. So those rules are still apply.
Oh, and well, maybe it needs to be maybe reset again. But a lot of people that are reading this thing says unless unless there's a sticker on the door, you know.
Oh, that it's okay to do
Yeah,
so.
and so I would imagine that that's going to be a little sticky if we say, as time goes by, where can they carry and where can they can't, and
And therein lies the problem
Yes.
with not having training, because we learned in
Exactly.
training where we couldn't take
Right.
it. So now you don't have to have the training, so nobody knows what it is.
But I just thought it was interesting as we go through this and, knowing, okay.
Sandy, do any of the city buildings, do any of have any signage or no?
What, on campus?
Yeah. Do any of them have
None that I'm
signage?
aware of. I still have the keys to the building, college business. I don't stray very far out there much anymore, but not much.
I'm trying to think, even, I work in the union, I don't recall seeing, I mean, there's signs about no smoking and that kind of thing, but I haven't seen anything regarding firearms unless I just haven't noticed
I
it.
don't think either.
Yeah.
There isn't. I mean,
You don't see any, Riley?
no, I mean,
Those
there's,
are the one that says no scooters.
Right.
I feel like common sense should prevail there, at least on the university proper, but.
I expect as we go through it, there's some good there, obviously, perhaps, because now people are wondering, you don't know who might be, so be nice. So it's interesting to follow as we go through.
Is there any marketing campaign that the departments are intending to do just to sort of make people more aware?
I've seen a few social media posts that kind of reiterate what the law still says about it, but I have not seen any
No PSAs?
PSAs or anything like that. And usually when you see stuff like that, it's different interest groups that put it out as a PSA or as an advertisement. I would not be surprised if you see Mothers Demand Action or any of those groups that are against gun violence maybe start putting some things out. But I haven't seen anything.
Just an interesting journey.
It's one of those things that it remains to be seen how much of a problem it's going to be or cause.
You still don't see an uptick?
I have not. I did notice when they changed the law to say you can openly carry a firearm if you had a permit, I started seeing more openly carried firearms. But I haven't seen very many since then. And hopefully, as I said in my news article, those that are responsible are probably doing the responsible thing. The ones we have to worry about are the ones that are irresponsible. So, and for the most part, I'm making the assumption that people are being responsible. That if they have them, they're being responsible about it. I haven't had my officers come to me and say they're finding more guns when they stop in cars, and I wouldn't expect them to tell me that unless they were surprised by that there was a gun in the car, which tells me if they do have one in the car, they're probably telling the officer they have one in the car, and that lowers their fear of that. And to them, that's perfectly acceptable as long as they know there's a gun there and that they're not reaching for it and they're able to go on with what their things are. So as long as folks are doing that.
So if it's a concealed permit, you can strap it on, I guess, and put your 6-shooter on your holster. In Texas not long ago, and I mean, buddy, they were hanging them out there. So if you have a concealed permit, you can openly carry, I guess, where they know you got one.
Well, even if you don't have a concealed weapons permit, you can openly carry.
You don't need a permit at all.
Okay, so it doesn't matter then.
Right, that's the whole thing, you don't have to have it.
Dang.
And at 18.
Yep, and at 18, and drop the age.
Yeah, drop the age too while they're at it.
The law did stipulate the state, it allocated money to the state to run ad campaigns along with create their own training class for it. So obviously they did that not that long ago, so it's gonna take some time. But.
So the law still stands, even beside all that, that if somebody gets caught with a gun at a school, that is against the law.
That is against the law.
They just should know it.
Yes.
But they're not gonna
And
know
what
it
the
probably.
law did before, instead of it just making, there's graduated offenses for first, second, third offenses, where before it wasn't. It was the same level each time.
Right.
So if you do bring a gun to the school and you get caught, you get charged. If you do it again, it's a more stricter penalty, and then again, a more stricter penalty. So schools, post offices, all of the places that you weren't allowed to take them before are still in the law.
Do we have any other open discussion topics?
Go Tigers.
Just so you know, I sent the constitutional carry guidance plan from SLED to your emails. So that's basically that is a list of prohibited places.
Thank you.
So the other thing I'll point out too, and this was asked recently,
The Constitution.
the law that was in place when we changed in the state to allow for open carry of a firearm, there were signage provisions that were put in the law for not only businesses, but for events, special events, that if you wanted to prohibit the open carry or any concealable weapon from being brought into that event, you would have to put signs up of a certain size and had to have certain nomenclature and certain verbiage per step. That law is still in effect. So if we have, say, an On the Avenue event downtown and we don't want weapons coming into there, we can still erect those signs on all the entrances prohibiting that, and then make that an area that you cannot openly carry or even conceivably carry a firearm.
Does a business, an individual business, have the right to
Yes.
not allow guns?
Yes.
Regardless
Just,
of the law?
just like before,
Okay.
but they have to have the proper signage.
Right.
In the signage, like very, very specific.
Very specific, it's
Yeah.
very
But they
specific.
have to stay.
Like if you just buy something off the internet, it probably doesn't
No,
comply
you
with
have
the law.
to,
Yeah.
South Carolina laws is very specific, and for my understanding, the reasoning for that there was some signage that was put up, people were charged, and then the NRA got involved because some of the signs were not as conspicuous, and so they went through the legislature and negotiated what the signs should look like, how big they needed to be, where they needed to be posted, et cetera, and that's why the law is as specific as it is.
Well, thank you. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So moved.
Moved